We start out on this new road. No turning back. But we have our ancestors with us. We're gonna continue to dance with them. Dreaming them. Calling them. Being them. We are becoming what we were.
It is part of that Mayan prophecies.
7 triangles of light.
Keep walking. You are the spirit of Unapku. Keep walking. We the human, we are doing the spirit of Unapku.
People who say that the gods made them from corn. They planned their lives according to the heavens. Well-versed in astronomy, using a sophisticated mathematics, they calculated the movements of the night sky thousands of years into the past and thousands of years into the future. They knew that the universe moved in cycles. Their lives were ruled by the rhythms of the natural world, planting and harvesting, birth and death, just as the great tree of life emerges from the earth.
Always they're connected. Science and religion.
In dreams, we learn from the Maya gods when to plant and when to harvest, when to set the fire, and when to do the corn ceremony.
What we're digging up, what we're coming up with is part of our history. And the men that lived here are some of the greatest men we've ever had. And it's a fact that we're getting to know more and more and more about the life of these people.
They still maintain their customs. They still maintain their ways of organizing their societies. And it's very exciting to see how much of the ancient Maya way of life is still alive as well.
Because American history does not begin in 1492 with Columbus. It begins in 200 BC with the first Maya king who wrote his name on a stone. What is happening now is the people who made these places, people like Yashpak or Bird Jaguar or Pakal, are getting back their voices. They are becoming real to us and speaking to the people of the 20th century about who built this place and why and what they felt and what they thought about the world. These are not anonymous people anymore.
You are the spirit of Unapku. Keep walking. We the human, we are doing the spirit of Unapku.
Yo. Las Aslan. LA Natives podcast.
LA Natives community.
Wow, Zero. It's been a great week.
Yeah, the Friday show was really impressive. The turnout. And what I really loved about that day was that we have brothers like you in the house. You know, we have different communities that are working towards one goal and that are working on how to try to work together in whatever capacity we can. And Friday night was just an example of like what, you know, groups of different like-minded individuals, but still autonomous to their own identity and still can be in that same environment. Kind of like what we commemorated the night too, right? It was different tribes came together. It wasn't one tribe. It was several different tribes that had history, that had maybe grudges, because we lived through that too, you know.
I think we made history that night, Zero.
Wow, what a night, man.
For that music, you know.
And I kind of just looking at the details just found out how hard it is to do something like that. It's
absolutely. It's
to
promote events, to organize events. It's
and then control the vibe. To control the vibe of that night that's what happens is that, you know, you go see one artist who's really into, like, let's say for instance Public Enemy, but who are their opening acts and what are their organizations or community things that they're bringing into this community event, right? Although it is a concert, I like to, maybe that's why I get in trouble, because I like to use the word community.
So on paper, we had about 275 people in attendance. Shout out to everyone that came out.
Nice. Shout out.
Shout
the
out
vendors.
to Zero of El Vuh, Olmeca, Nug Life, Product Pistolas, Sub One, Poco One. Shout out to all the artists that contributed. We will be announcing the next gathering soon in the next 3-4 months. That's my goal, to get another gathering going.
Absolutely.
Shout out to everyone that stuck by us. Again, this event was for you guys.
Yeah.
You know, and for everyone that attended, thank you for all the great positive feedback, right, Zero?
Yeah. I mean, some of the comments were just like, I didn't want to go home. And it's just the like-minded people let their guard down for a little bit and started realizing the commonalities of everything. Yeah. You know?
And it was through, you know, situations like this one with the event, with our podcast, we ended up meeting, you know, great people like Dr. Gordon.
Absolutely. And learning about a very interesting project that's happening in Los Angeles. And so introduce yourselves, guys.
Yeah. Dr. Gordon, or Dr. G for short, and I'm the executive director, principal of Los Angeles College Prep Academy.
Oh, okay.
It's a high school that's focused on the decolonial wellness framework.
Nice.
To where us folks of color could just be us, be seen, be heard, and
Nice.
in our own ways of the land that we come from.
Wow.
And with an international decolonial lens, to where, again, it doesn't matter what tribe you're from, similar to the show, what indigenous group you're coming from. My people's is from the Philippines, or
Right.
the lands that they called the Philippines, and we don't even have that history sometimes of what it was called before the Philippines.
Right.
And so and my wife here, who helps me run the school as well, Vanessa Ochoa.
What's up, everybody? I go by La Doctora, so I'm coming from Boyle Heights, born and raised. I'm also a dean over at East LA College, so we really try to push education, and so Dr. G is my partner, and together we do this work to really counter white supremacy and ensure that all folks have access to information, but information of the soul.
Yeah. Wow. That's a crazy statement for a charter school, and something that's being offered to our community, because a lot of people misunderstand those statements as being radical, right?
You know what?
And we're using those statements to be informative,
Right.
not radical.
You know,
radicalizing is the consequence of learning this information, right? Because you go, man, that's unfair, and I'm so pissed off, I got to do something. But when you get information, and when you have a place like theirs, and you're just kind of redefining those terms to be informational versus radical, then true change can come, because we feed that to our children. What were you going to say,
You
Mano?
know, I have to say that was really refreshing to hear. You know, because that's what I'm all about. You know, getting an alternative, creating an alternative. That's how I see it. Because that's what, you know, what I do for a business. You know, I try to create movements that represent the alternative. You know, and there's always that opportunity there, right, Dr. Gordon?
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that, yes, it's quote unquote radical within a white supremacist capitalist structure.
Yeah.
Right. And so they make it as if we're the ones who are crazy,
Right.
because we just trying to be us. We're not doing anything outside of just trying to be black and brown people in our own skin.
Right.
And so, because they flipped the script so much over the years, that it becomes radicalized, and then we're seen as the one that needs to fall in line.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then within this context of free schools, public schools, there's these California content standards that you have to follow, and all the different kind of rules and regulations in regards to that. And if you fall out of the pocket a little too much, then yeah, you might get kicked off the bus, in terms of, especially with school leaders. I've been waiting 19 years to finally spread my wings a little bit and have a free autonomous school outside of the larger charter networks. And it's refreshing that I don't have to constantly watch my back. I can be on the podcast and talk about white supremacy and critical race theory and all the different things that we're going to be teaching the kids for the upcoming school year, and not have to worry about, again, some overseer from the central office telling me I got to stop.
Wow. What a powerful.
That's deep right there.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing to have in our community, you know. And I'm glad that you're on our show trying to, you know, make sure that you have the proper attendance and all that stuff.
May I ask, were there schools similar to this back when I was young? You know, back when I was, I'm 36 now, about to turn 37, but, when I was 12, 13, 14, was there something similar in LA?
Yeah,
because I think your school is truly one of a kind.
And let me start with a little bit of my origin story. Bay Area, born and raised in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. 80s kid, right? Born in 75. I'm 46, so as E40 says, an old youngster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now a little bit older and went through a schooling system up north where nothing like this existed. Mm-hmm. And there was nothing for young Filipino kids to actually identify with their indigenous roots. The colonialism that we've got washed over 2 times, both from the United States and from Spain, completely obliterated all of our consciousness. And so we had no access to this. We had no MCs that some of the kids have nowadays with Bamboo, and shout out to Beat Rock for them doing their thing and making it known that we're here, Filipino folks are here to stay. And we had no voices, formal voices to kind of teach us those things, nor the elders that a lot of folks here in the Americas have, because the islands I've never seen. I was born and raised here in the United States of America, and looked at the kids that were coming over who were speaking Tagalog, Visayan, Ilocano, and all the languages of our islands as the enemy, right? When in fact those were my brothers that were more Filipino than I was. But again, no schools that would teach us about who we were,
right?
And why colonialism as a framework, as a blueprint to annihilate our people, continued to just wreak havoc on us our entire lives. So nothing like that growing up. No hip hop from a indigenous Filipino lens to kind of navigate through. But I had some artists that I really looked up to when I was a kid. Eric B. and Rakim being one of them.
Absolutely.
Public Enemy a little bit later, and then hip hop really became my definition, I guess, of indigeneity at that time, because I had no attached roots to the Philippines. And so this was the only thing for a kid who was lost in the woods, so to speak, to find out about a culture that embraced Black and brown kids in the United States.
Absolutely. Man, that's deep, right, Zero?
Yeah, I mean...
and it's crazy how hip-hop is kind of like fully involved in this movement.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is how hip-hop is like somewhat of a glue that puts things together. And then, if you're good enough, it gets popularized.
Right.
And then you have a voice. Kind of like Bamboo. I mean, I remember playing with Bamboo most of my career, and he's always had, good opportunities, like signing with like Muggs' label and doing lots of good things as an artist. And I have a special relationship with the Filipino community, because I used to work in the Bay Area doing developmental help, and there was a lot of Filipinos and Mexicans that worked in that field, taking care of people with autism and all sorts. So I kind of related with their story, and almost felt like, well, what a challenge to be from, like, not in your native land. It's almost like an African slave, where they're like displaced so far, where they can't even go, well, let me go back home. But what is home? They never ever stepped foot on that land, or were told stories about that land. So for you to be a principal and taking over some sort of a charter school that's gonna help with that in any, capacity, whether it be Native American or, studying history is just studying history. I mean, and putting the place. I have my own opinion about education, and there's reasons why I feel like public education is the way it is. But then comes revolutionaries like yourselves who go, well, we know how to read paperwork. well, we know how to fill out applications. And now we can teach whatever we want to teach as long as it follows these guidelines.
Right.
But being tenacious enough to go through that paperwork, they designed it for a reason that way. Because,
Absolutely.
there's a reason why we don't read books, right? Because they're too long. It's like, the minute it's like, hey, I want you to read this book. And if it's this thick, you're like, oh, but if it's really thin, you're like, oh, okay, I could blow through this.
So, guys, I want to ask both of you guys, about critical race theory. I've actually asked a couple of my buddies, like, yo, have you heard of that term? They have no idea what that term means, right? And, it's been leaking out here and there throughout the mainstream media, right? There's battles between different states and stuff. So, talking to Dr. Gordon, to our audience that doesn't know about critical race theory, can you go ahead and break that down?
I'm going to go ahead and speak on that. So first, kudos to Kimberly Crenshaw, who was one of the founders of critical race theory. So, and then also to Dr. Daniel Solorzano, my mentor at UCLA, who brought critical race theory to education. But critical race theory is this theory that started in law. And it was a ton of folks of color that were seeing the injustice in the law. And so they got together and started talking about the intersectionalities of race, class, gender, immigration, and it started to make its way into law. But how it made its way into education is through folks like Daniel Solorzano, who's over at UCLA. So I call him one of the godfathers of critical race theory. And I have the blessing to be able to have, he's my mentor. And so he brought it over to education where we really look and dissect all of our intersections. So when I teach, I use critical race theory. But in essence, it's a theory that takes you as a person that looks at your different layers. And so why is it so controversial? Because it goes back to history. When you know your history, you're powerful. So all these different states are trying to cut it out of the curriculum because it means power for folks like us, right? And so we really stress it at the school. I stress it. I'm also an adjunct professor at Mount St. Mary's. So anytime I get a moment to talk about critical race theory, we're teaching it. Also at East LA College, I expose all scholars, staff, faculty to critical race theory because we live intersectional identities. Right? I'm married to a Filipino, that's an intersection. So critical race theory is so important. We need to fight against these folks that are trying to ban truth.
Right. Like I said, I have my own opinion in it. And when I study history, I kind of look at it in a way that's like, they're not going to give you every bit of information. They're going to give you what they want you to see. Right. Right. And that's the way I felt like when this country went into institutions of learning that, Rockefellers, Carnegies, why are they involved in these endowments and being on the boards that say what the curriculum is going to be, what's the direction? And it's like anything else, though. You have to protect yourself by understanding your position in this world, and that's a very difficult position. And if individuals like yourself went through the racist institution to get the knowledge that you have, because you had to endure so much race. I know, because college is very racist.
Yeah, if I can speak on that, yeah, 'cause
absolutely.
I'm working on my book too, and so hip hop saved me. So I'm actually working on a piece on hip hop and leadership, because what you're saying is, it speaks to me in that as you're going through racist white supremacist institutions. So I went to UC Berkeley, Stanford, and UCLA for my PhD, but we met in law school. I experienced a lot of racism, right? I was seen and classified as the affirmative action kid, considering the fact that I did really well in school. I was the affirmative action kid. So that put a lot of trauma. So it takes a toll on you, but hip hop saved me, because it was hip hop who I was constantly going to ensure that I had a place where I felt whole. And so I'm working on a piece right now on how hip hop is really instrumental to my leadership at East LA College as a mujer, as a person from Boyle Heights, born and raised from the neighborhood, and ensuring that we fight white supremacy at East LA College. Because even though it's in East LA, there's still a lot of internal racism, even within brown people. So I've been countering a lot of that, and I use hip hop as my tool, as my savior.
That's absolutely, that's an amazing perspective.
I'm the biggest fan of that. I need to cover that on Underground Hip Hop.
Oh, I'll come back.
And what I want to add to that, though, is that we seem to think that white supremacy is this white man, right? It's not. That's not what it is.
It's an ideology.
Exactly. It's an
Yes.
ideology.
And this is what, and we always go over this almost in every episode. It's not all white people, guys.
No.
No, so this is what I teach our son. White supremacy is an ideology. So I've engaged with black and brown people that are white, aspiring white supremacists.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a white person, right? Because I have a lot of white solidarity partners that help me in the work because they can be in spaces that I can't be in and speak in a certain way and tone that I can't. So we need white solidarity partners. But I've also encountered a lot of white supremacy, white aspiring practicing people of color. So they exist. It's an ideology.
Absolutely.
It's a way of thinking.
And it's rooted in, let me find the right word, patriarchy, right? If you cannot recognize that white supremacy's main tool is to subjugate women, you know, that's like the main tool that they have, you know, because our women are intelligent beings. They're like the community organ. I know what my partner does from my family, you know, coming from the historical trauma and the recent trauma of our family life. Yeah, and you could still kind of keep it together and keep the house clean and put aside all the things you need to do. See, we were talking about this on the way to the podcast, and I was telling her, like, autonomy is letting you talk, me sharing my information, but not telling you what to say. You have to form your own thought and go, yeah, you know what, I agree with this, or you know what, that's rooted in, you're really machismo. She always tells me that all the time. And that's my challenge. And I have to humble myself to be like, you know, even if you're wrong, I have to still be humble to be like, this is my partner.
Right.
You know, I have to be gentle, and we still have to live a life together, and we still have to raise children together. That fights white supremacy far more than you trying to point out some white guy who just has horrible opinions. That's what I really want to kind of share.
Yeah, because countering white supremacy starts in the home, right? So one thing, because I teach at Mount St. Mary's, a predominantly female institution, we talk with the mujeres about machismo sometimes is rooted more in the way women treat their children. Women need to combat machismo. Sometimes they're the biggest protagonist of machismo. So we have these conversations. So I appreciate you being open to calling yourself out when you engage in machista practices, right? But mujeres can also be machistas. And so we need to interrogate that too. And so that's why we do certain kind of readings to make sure they understand their important role in raising children, right? Because all those practices start from birth, right? And it's an ideology again. Right. So countering machismo is countering white supremacy.
Right. And I would hope that and I know that the school that you're, you know, putting all your energy in and all that would cover things like that at an age that's like necessary. Right?
Yep.
Like 5 years old, 7 years old, 6 years. Imagine if we taught our children at 7 years old how to determine human beings as being male and female, not the dominant individual who has all the answers, and you listen to me because I feed you and I clothe you and I pay for your stuff. And like, I refused. There was a point where I wanted my wife to understand that I wasn't going to go back to that role with her as we grew, right? And I said, I'm not going to be that for you. And, you know, when we were discussing that, she misunderstood it as like I didn't care about her. But that's not it at all. I knew that she was strong enough, wise enough, and intelligent enough to even help me when I'm weak financially. And that's what we learned. And that's how we dismantled white supremacy in our environment. And we still have a long way to go. Believe me, I'm a male. So we have a lot of things to deal with. But I like to think that, you know, I'm a warrior that's finding my own self and my own mirror. So if I look in my mirror every morning and I say, hey, you know what? I did a little bit more not to be like them. Then I took one more step. And I've taught my children to follow it. So that's the main thing. I'm really happy that my partner is here.
Everybody.
It's a good show. I like, you know what I like about this show is that it has a balance. You know, Armando and his partner are involved with LA Natives, and, you know, obviously Jenny's been in my first shows, and now you're here with, you know, the education part of things, and we're so happy to meet you, and hopefully we can inspire people to go to your school, at least find some more information. If you want to raise different children with different perspectives that are not manipulated by rich elites, you know, who have an agenda because you can't read at their level. See, a lot of people don't understand that when things got popular in the U.S., there was a 93% reading level for the white community as we were being displaced and, you know, orphaned. And yeah, who's going to teach us how to read, right? And then everything goes on. And now we're in the 2021, putting out legislation with words that you have no idea what they mean.
Yeah.
We need brothers like, you know, and sisters like yourselves that know, hey, they just passed a law that's being very, very whatever, right? So, yeah.
Growing up as a kid, going to public school, I've always thought
Show the mic.
Administration. I was always in fear of the principal and the administration for some weird reason. I have to ask you, bro. And
It's
you've been
designed that way. It's designed that way.
Wow, talk about that. I want to know about that.
Like you guys are the principals of the school, right?
Yeah. That's part of the design. The part of the design is that a school rooted in white supremacy is a jail.
Here we
and
go.
So the person who controls the jail, the principal or the warden, right, is someone to be feared because if you fall out of line, then that's the person that's going to come down on you.
Was it because it was only when I got in trouble I would see them?
And that's the history of what administrators and old school white supremacist principals do, is they only come in when the kid's in trouble, right? And so you only begin to interact with families when there's trouble.
And like for a kid like myself that constantly got in trouble, the fear that I would put my parents through, it was traumatizing. When it could have been more productive, they could have
Had a conversation with you.
went at it with a different way instead of just, kicking me out of the whole district.
Yeah, and then let's talk about like what were the reasons you were getting in trouble too. That's another thing too, because that system is very much like if you're not walking like this, then you're completely out of the line for them. And then that's where we were always in trouble for what? For speaking our mind, for dressing without their dress code, for what was the you know what I mean? Like we're already trained for that system.
My personal reasons is I was just like, my parents got divorced, single mom. I had my twin brother. We were always trying to get into mischief. She had 2-3 jobs, and we had nothing else to do but to just like do stupid things, trickle it down to the schools, and then, selling things I wasn't supposed to in the school and just hanging out with the wrong crowd. But when I would get in trouble, they just took it above and beyond, to the point where they were treating me like a damn criminal. When all I was doing is just, I guess living life and growing up as a kid with a, fucked up background.
Exactly, but also lashing out because there wasn't no support in your home.
Right.
So now switching the mentality of the principals that understand that. Now you guys, I just barely met you, Mujer, and you seem like a very beautiful spirit. You too, we just met at the, a couple weeks ago and stuff. But I think that really matters because if you have a principal that grew up in the same neighborhood as you grew up. I was born and raised in Boyle Heights, and I think that it would have another understanding, such as myself as a mother. I'm around children all the time, and my son just shared with me, hey mom, I have a friend of mine, he lashes out a lot, and la la la. Right. And I asked him, how do you know if his mother's even around? Yeah. He lashes out, and he says, hey, don't talk about my mom, but how do you guys even know if he has a mother? So really understanding, coming from a perspective with two people of color that understand that mentality that says, hey, this child is lashing out because what's happening at home, instead of treating the child like a criminal.
They're crying out for love at the end of the day.
Right. They would always tell me,
at the end of it, what are you really crying out for?
They would always tell me, your parents are fully responsible for what you do at the school. So they would like put fear in me, like, okay, I have to, walk on eggshells if I continue to decide to act like a, stupid kid at school.
Which is my point.
And then I went to a continuation. They had to kick me out. And then I went to a school that was called a continuation school. I didn't really understand it at first. But then my goal was to get out of that continuation school and go back to my regular high school, which I did, and I graduated.
And that's where I did actually a lot of my work. The bulk of my work has been with those continuation schools, right? So I worked with Job Corps. And in Job Corps, a lot of the kids that didn't fit into those boxes that they wanted folks to fit into didn't fit in. And so I spent 15 years working with the kids that were the throwaways of society, right? Well, all you have to do is sit down, have a conversation with them, understand where they're coming from, their pain, their trauma from the different neighborhood situations that they come from, and then give them some books that really make sense. Give them some hip hop that really makes sense too. Have them listen to some Immortal Technique.
But can I interject too in theory, right? So I'm going to throw this out because here's another theory that everybody, I hope, will look up and really think about. What you were doing is you were teaching these students critical community cultural wealth. So what is community cultural wealth? In short, it's this idea that you come with assets, power, and strength to whatever space. So your testimonial and the exchange of stories allows you to acknowledge the community cultural wealth of students. So when someone feels validated, they're going to show up, right?
Yes.
So I want everybody that's listening to look up Community Cultural Wealth by Tara Yoso, who's an education professor at UC Riverside. These are the theories that I tell students, put them in your pockets so that if anybody tries to call you out, be like, no, I'm executing my community cultural wealth. What are you going to do about that, right? And to speak with that intentionality and with that power. And that's the kind of work that we're doing over at East LA College, really talking about how schools are violent, right? Really calling it for what it is, because I was born and raised in Boyle Heights, right? And being able to connect and understanding that history and testimonial allows us to connect. And because we are in formalized school spaces, teaching folks about the theory so they can use it to their advantage. When they walk into a room, they know how to speak and move. It's that code switching that I tell students.
Yes.
You got to code switch, and that's how I survived schooling.
Yeah.
You code switch.
I guess also one question,
That was beautiful.
because I would love to, and like a lot of people ask me, because I'm a recording artist, have a certain perspective. They always go, "What book did you read?" Right? It's like I read a few books, not a lot of books, but a few, and I learn more on the oral side. But I make my own conclusions. So then everything I read or everything I see is more opinionated. And how am I going to digest it and do that? That's the way I learn. But my point was, that's because I had a hurdle about reading, because I'm dyslexic and it's just too difficult, too hard to focus. Since you guys have doctorates, how did you get inspired? Because you had to read.
A lot.
I
still read.
And I hated it as a kid.
Reading is like jumping off
not.
a plane when you tell somebody, hey, you got to read this book. It's like, oh, no. It's like, oh, am I going to understand it? They start doubting. And
especially if you don't understand the language.
Yes.
I think, I want to just share a little bit about my personal life. I was, tossed around through high school, and then until I ended up in a continuation, Monterey continuation, right behind Garfield High School, you know. That's when I actually felt heard as a student. I didn't fit in the typical school system where it's like, learn history, learn this, learn that. But when I went into the continuation, I found a few teachers that were like, Jenny, you're really good at writing. You know what? You're going to take this history class. Why don't you write about something that you like to write about? And here I am, little Jenny, 14, 15 years old, and I opened up a book about abortions. And, for those that don't know me, I'm a traditional partera. So here I am, 14 years old, bam, with the teacher that gave me the opportunity to share what I wanted to learn about. And that's what really got me through my whole high school schooling. It's like after that, it's like, then I did another, report on pregnancy, and then on women's health, and then this, without giving me the script of like, wait, I'm not going to accept these. This is not what the protocols are. You didn't write about this and that, So that's really important. I really felt that, and so I'm a continuation student, and that's why I tell my kids now, it's like, hey, if you guys don't like the high school system, go for it. Do your own thing, but at least empower yourself to continue that.
Shout out to Columbus High. They would tell me, you're not allowed to bring a backpack or a pencil. Right? And then I would ask the cop, why, right? And a police officer, he would say, because you get stabbed or you could stab someone. I'm like, why are you telling me this? And I'm 15 years old at a continuation school.
Right.
And it's the goddamn police officer
themselves that are saying.
Can you imagine how I felt walking around to that school?
Like, oh my God,
it's back to schools again, being
set up for something of that prison system that's set up.
They didn't allow students to bring their own pencils and pens. I don't know.
a lot of it's psychological. A lot of it, is. I remember going to high school, and the security guards and the police officers, they have grudges against people who are not following the rules, and it is kind of like a jail kind of setting. And the only way to combat that is to inform yourself and know your rights. Like if children knew how to read properly, or I didn't start reading until I was 19 years old. So my friend told me, why don't you read? And I was like, man, I don't know how to read. I don't like reading. He's all, dummy, read what you like. So don't read what you don't like. Don't go read the newspaper. Go read about this, that, and the other. And I chose the subjects that I like to read, and they were difficult. But I was inspired to read what I like. I guess my question was, and as Jenny experienced her difficulties going through school, I know that we have a humongous percentage of dropouts. But I personally, if I analyze history, it's because we don't know how to read their language.
Their language.
That's right.
And and apply their language towards your defense.
Yeah.
I think those are the most popular slaves and historical, like Malcolm X. Like no one sat him down and went, okay, son, I'm gonna, you get a full ride to Harvard. No, he just read, didn't find it, read. He just became hyper intelligent on his own. And that's what I really would love to plant a seed, because you guys are doctors. And not only did you have to go through the white supremacist system, but you had to read a lot. And what were the tools that you used, so we can kind of push that to our community? Because reading is
Really?
not the only
we're
tool.
talking about like the basics,
but it is a tool.
It's like
what are
picking up those
what are the
university
techniques
books.
we're going to use so that we can inform ourselves to read something boring, where it's not such a challenge, where you're like, hey, did you read that new law? Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't read that law.
But I wrote the post.
But I don't agree with it,
And I think we're on this hip hop, podcast, and it goes back to hip hop a lot of the times with the youth, especially high school kids, right?
Nice.
You gotta package the information in a way that they're gonna pay attention and read it. And if it happens to be in a 3-minute song with 16 bar verses and some hooks, and they're gonna pay attention to that, then that's the hook. That's the hook to really get folks to begin to learn.
Yeah.
That was the hook for me.
Interesting.
Again, I didn't read my first book like you until I was 18, 19 years old. In high school, I read nothing. Not the traditional books, but again, I was listening to Eric B. and Rakim. I was listening to Chuck D. and Public Enemy. I was listening to X-Clan a little bit later down the line. Tribe Called Quest, and all of this Afrocentricity that wasn't Filipino-centered, right? But it was indigenous-centered to stolen Africans here in the United States. And so that spoke to me, with me not even knowing it, because I was lost, trying to find out who I was as a Filipino youth with no roots here. But my roots were somewhere place else. But again, because I was brainwashed through colonialism to hate my brother who spoke Tagalog, who spoke Ilocano, who spoke Visayan and all these different languages, but if they spoke that way, then that was my enemy, because they were beefing with my cousins who were in gangs and clashed over language and over immigrant status, and you eat differently than me, and you don't speak English as good as me, and my parents didn't teach me any of those languages because they wanted me to be American and white and all those things, and that just plays a whole number on your head as a kid, right? So the project that we're working on right now, this decolonial wellness framework, in a lot of ways, it's my continuation of unpacking all my trauma as a kid, and I don't want anybody of color to have to go through that. And so if you're rooted in whatever indigenous community you're from, then the higher likelihood that you're not going to go crazy. We have some of the highest suicide rates in the Pacific Islander community with Filipinos. And a lot of that is due to the colonial mind state, because our parents were so brainwashed to think that we were savages, that the Catholicism that was forced on our people from Spain was good for us. When I first learned about that when I was 18 or 19 years old, and read it in a book called People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, and how our Filipino people were just completely obliterated by Spain and the United States. And I told my mom this, and I was very excited. And she said, well, son, we needed that. We needed to be Christianized. We needed to be civilized, because we didn't know how to act, and we didn't know how to self-govern. We didn't know how to be good people. So that was good for us, son.
That's white supremacy.
Yes.
And no shade on my mother at all. Rest in peace. She died at 57 to cancer. A lot of that due to the colonial mindset as well. She got mentally and physically sick because she was trying to assimilate so hard into white supremacy.
Because she was teased as a young kid when they first came from the Philippines to Fremont. They were one of the first Filipino families.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she went through it as a teenager, 16, 17 years old, trying to fit into white society at the time in the mid 1960s, and couldn't do it because she's not white. Yeah. But trying her best to do it and going through that trauma and then not wanting to pass that on to her kids, not wanting us to have an accent, not wanting us to speak any of the languages so that we could have an easier life than she did.
I think that goes with all cultures, right? That goes with, again, the missions and everything that's happening with the missing children and everything. And, it's like really making you feel like, what? You have long hair? Oh, my God, you look so dirty. That's horrible that your mom let you grow your long hair. It's like, it's brainwashing. It's white supremacy.
It's exactly what Jenny said. Those native children that were taken to those residential schools, the parents felt like they were doing a good thing. Yeah. Like, I'm helping them.
Assimilate
to a point where it's like, you don't know the truth. And I think that's where we got to in the early 90s when we became self-identified and found a way. And it was through hip-hop, because hip-hop was, when you heard hip-hop on a level that was conscious, you actually went, wow, that guy's intellectual. He used a certain word that, and so then you want to be, as a hip-hop artist, you're like, well, how did he use those words? What did he read, or what did he see? And then you start getting inspired to do that. That's really what I want the community to get out of any educational system, is just know that it's information. I told my son before he went to college, I go, don't go, you think you're going to go over there and learn something? You're not going to learn anything, son. But you're going to experience, and you're going to fail. And we're going to be here for you. And then out of all of it together, you're going to learn something. That's what you learn. It's called life, right? But don't think that books or professors, and I'm not trying to discourage your inspiration.
But it's true.
It's true.
Absolutely true. I agree. There's a set of curriculum for yourself to remain sane as you go through the white supremacist academy.
Thank you.
And so we came out probably twice as good as the white student, because we had to read things that would keep us from going crazy. Wow. And if we didn't, then we probably would have dropped out of college. Well, we actually dropped out of law school. that's where we met. And a lot of the trauma that we both experienced in law school was due to, we had to really learn this white supremacist structure and practice in the ways that they practice if we wanted to get that bar card in California. For me, I was checked out mentally after semester 1, and went back to hang out with the fellas and make some music. That's what I did. You stayed for
a little bit longer,
a year and a half, and then finally came to the realization that
it's not for me.
I'm done with trying to practice this stuff. This is way too much on my mind, body, and soul as a woman of color. So peace, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
What a challenge.
Yeah, that was hard.
And that was law. Right, that was the subject of law. Yeah.
But I still encourage folks that, with that said, I still want to encourage folks to study laws, right? Because you have to understand the white man's law, right, to be able to combat it. But it comes at a cost. And I always tell people this, like, the work that we do is life, and it comes at a cost, but I'm okay with that cost. Because I know that this work eventually will kill me, but it's work that I need to do. Because we are here for the next generation, for my son, your son, everyone's children.
Absolutely.
And so this work it's every day. And that's what I tell the president at East LA College. I said, this is grinding. This is life and death. This is Boyle Heights. This is serious. So I don't play. This ain't no joke.
No.
So that's how I come to my spaces, right? And so people really appreciate that, and young people appreciate that because they don't get to experience that often, right? But again, I'm okay with that cost because it does come at a cost.
Yeah. To go through a racist institution and come out with a certificate of degree comes with a lot of compromise.
It does.
On
A
your
lot of
spirit.
a lot of compromise, which is why also I want to speak to this. What you just said is it hit me. It comes with a lot of compromise in our leadership, in our styles, which is why we created our own clothing company, because we needed some sanity to be able to speak freely. Because even though we're within structures and we try to be free, there's still a lot of compromising you have to do. So we did our own thing on the side to be able to just speak without anybody telling us, well, you can't say that, and you can't say that in this meeting.
Or without it reflecting on you and destroying your work that you work so hard to.
I do want to encourage folks that work, because people ask me, so why do you stay within the system? And that's a choice that I made. I work in the system of schools, and I try my very best to combat those things, right, that are harmful to our community. But I also encourage people to also have your side hustles, because you do need something outside of, if you're going to be in the structure, you do need some things for your therapy to have you be sane, so that you can be there for your family, because the system is heavy.
Community, are you guys listening? For the next 7 generations, you guys are up in the battlefield right now. You guys are up on that front line. Really pay attention to your mental health. Your mental health is awareness. We can't have you guys going out there and again studying and not taking care of your mental health.
Yes.
Your nutrition is a big one too. You know, a lot of colleges feed on like just junk food.
Yeah.
You know, we have a kid that's in college and it's
the
just
freshman
like,
20.
the hot dogs and pizza and all of that. Remember, your body is sacred. Your body is 80% water. When we are studying, I tell my clients this all the time, when you're studying in the computer, it's very similar to running. So sometimes people get headaches when they've done so much computer work and say, oh my God, I'm so tired. Why am I tired? I just sat here and just did computer work. That's similar to going for a run. So really be mindful of the way your body feels after you pick up that book. How many hours are you going to dedicate to studying? And how are you going to take care of yourself after reading that, whatever you just finished
And
reading?
I appreciate you saying that, because you actually asked the question of, what books inspired us. But actually, food justice is so important to being able to survive in a white supremacist world, right? Because it's really damaging. So we take our food very seriously. We impart that on our son, because we tell him, and I tell this to students, there's some weapons of mass destruction. Sugar, salt. Those were brought over by the colonizer. So we talk to our young son about the impact of sugar and salt. I'm always talking about it in Boyle Heights to the community, because we have the highest rates of obesity and diabetes. And so that is connected to how you survive in the school structure. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
And a part of our decolonial wellness framework at school, we have this beautiful piece of land. It's 2.5, maybe 3-4 acres. And we are literally thinking through how to cultivate our own fruits, our own vegetables, so that we have a garden for families and students to learn how to grow their own food.
Yeah, you guys have a beautiful campus.
This is all
beautiful
in the heart of Los Angeles.
Right in the middle of Los Angeles. It's unheard of for a public free charter school to have this amount of land. And so it's been a blessing to all of us to be able to partake in reimagining what this land can be for not just our immediate students and families, but for the larger community, right? And it's become a place in the last year of healing. And again, not just for our families and our students, but for the general community that need a space to hash out differences, to have peace talks, and other folks of color from different walks of life have been utilizing it for different healing spaces as well. Palms Up Academy, they're our poetry partner, and that's run by Ariana Bosco. She's part of the Bosco family. They're a group of Filipinos who do acting, singing, and poetry in Hollywood, and they do a weekly open mic session that's therapeutic for our community.
And again, empowering people to follow their passion, because not everybody's all about the 9 to 5, living an artist's way is a free life. And that's something that the old community doesn't understand. It's like, maybe your mother's not going to understand, like, ¿cómo que vas a ser músico? Like, how are you going to get paid for that? Like, that's not a job. You got to go be a doctor and this and that. No, sorry. There, you can definitely get paid to be a musician. There's a big community for that, especially if you're sharing a positive message.
And so part of my own trauma, right, becoming a school leader was okay to do in my family. Not even a teacher was okay because that's not enough status in a colonized mind of an old school Filipino person, right? And so they want you to be in these positions of quote unquote power to where you can show people that you've made it in a white supremacist world. Some of them don't even know that I dropped out of law school because, again, of the trauma that I have and they have in regards to power structures in white supremacy systems.
Right. I could imagine, like, my grandparents came here in the 30s to Los Angeles, and they had to grow up in the 50s and 60s and the racism that involved, but they were very the same way. Like, they wanted me when I can remember being as young as 5 years old. What are you going to be, a doctor, a lawyer? Like, they run it all off. Like, you know, like if those are the important jobs and anything less than that is going to be, nothing. You know, nothing. Like, you know, what if I just want to be like somebody that just travels the world by himself and meditates and doesn't have to be rich. He could just do
There's
what
lots of people that survive like that.
Yeah, there's many forms of getting life fulfillment. And I think the educational structures just kind of put us in a position to work.
Yes. We always talk to our son about how, you know, college trains you to be middle management, right? And there's schools that operate, that were created that way intentionally. I won't name them, but they really...
I will. I'll name them.
They really
talk about that in a minute.
train you to do the 9 to 5, to be middle management, to think in the box and not to be creative. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of our black and brown kids are going to these schools because it fits the immigrant mentality of success.
And a lot of these schools are in Los Angeles. I used to work for one last year, and I'll call it out. Alliance College Ready Public Schools, funded by billionaires, by white Republican racist billionaires who feel some type of way because they're donating money to black and brown kids in the hood. Now they cool, right? They made this anti-racist statement about how Alliance is all about making an anti-racist structure in terms of having that curriculum come out into the schools. But I was championing that last school year, well, 2 school years now, as a director of family and community engagement. And I really started to have parents start asking critical questions about the curriculum, about why there weren't black and brown faces, a lot of them in the books that they were reading in the classrooms. And like I told you, I got the boot. I got kicked off that bus.
Well, I mean, like I said, have a certain perspective about how things were done. And they've always treated us as like somewhat of the poorest of the poor. We're like cattle. They can kind of, you know, shoot us this way or shoot us that way. And they never really gave us a chance to be intellectual or smart. How could we, though, if we didn't know how to read? And if everything's based on that, right? New laws, new legislations. Like, it's kind of like recently my artist friend sends me this thing from Fox News, and they start putting an expose on climate change lockdowns, right? Climate change lockdowns. People are going to go along with that. Why? Because they don't want to read the legislation or the law that was passed or what justifies this climate shutdown. They don't even want to read the fact that East Germany used to implement certain type of structures that they're calling climate shutdowns, right? Like in East Germany, like what Joe Biden was saying was, you know, we have to restrict your driving from here to there if it's unnecessary. How are you allowed to do that? You know, but if you don't read, if you can't go, hey, you know what? Let me read this book about the 1950s, 1940s, and Hitler and how they did. Whoa, what the heck? That kind of sounds familiar. Like, let me read this legislation. Oh, wow, they kind of pair up.
Right.
But we don't know how to read. We just go along with it. We just go, oh, wow. What did it say? You know, and you rely on somebody who has a doctorate or
a quote-unquote specialist, but...
Anybody educated. Like, it's just like really like we have this divide even in our own community where if you have a degree and you don't have a degree, that means you're not smart. Even though you are smart. Like, we're the hip hop intellectuals. We're the ones that went, oh yeah, read Noam Chomsky. Okay, well, let's try. And then you read it and you get through it, and it takes you longer than the guy that had to read it because of the assignment, right? But that guy just had to read for that assignment. It's not like he got into the philosophy of Noam Chomsky and read all his literature and developed it. That's what hip hop did. Hip hop did that for me. Is it went, oh, it wasn't a particular individual, but it was a whole culture. Right. Oh, there are things that, and then I started getting to the point where I didn't even need to read the books anymore. It started speaking to me through my own spirit, my own blood, my own understanding. And that's when I started switching my mentality about education to more about information. As an opinion from someone like your guys have an opinion about education. I like that opinion. I would send my children to your school because I like that opinion about how they're educating and how you're taking reading, not to go get a job, but read so that people don't take advantage of you.
To liberate yourself.
Read because people can feed you poison.
That's right.
Read because people are just going, those stupid guys, well, let's invest in this school and look at how many, shop clerks and register guys we have for our businesses like Walmart and Ross and Burlington. They're reading and taking advantage of your children who are disinterested in reading, right? I would encourage my children to be one of the skills in life that they had was to be able to read.
That's right.
Absolutely. We got Zero of El Vuh. We got Dr. Gordon of the LA College Prep Academy. One thing that I like about the school is the name itself is straight to the point. What's the percentage rate of kids graduating and actually going to college?
Being prepared to go to college.
Yeah,
that's the key.
98% of our seniors graduate and are accepted into four-year universities. And
98%.
98%.
But can I give a caveat to that, because this is important to the story of the prep? So, okay, you can get 98% of folks into college, but are they actually going to get there and graduate? And so one of the things that I push my partner to do a lot in the school, is to talk and ensure that these students have the skill sets to be able to make it through college, right? So you teach students, high school students, about imposter syndrome. So for folks who don't know what imposter syndrome, again, another theory to put in your pocket.
Breaking it down, everybody.
Imposter syndrome is the idea that I'm not good enough to be at UC Berkeley, the top-notch institution, because I'm brown and I'm from Boyle Heights. And so then you begin to question yourself, and you're like, you know what, I don't belong here. You start to fail your classes, and you become then what we call a reverse transfer. You go back to a community college. That happens a lot to a lot of black and brown kids that go to these elite institutions, right, that we call, because they don't know they don't have that knowledge base. But the prep is teaching these students. It's not just about 98% college acceptance. It's about making sure that I get there and I survive and I thrive at UCLA or wherever. And that I can call it out when I experience it. That's what that means.
That's power.
Wow, that is
giving
amazing.
Giving them books, right? Such as Gloria Anzaldúa's Borderlands is what I'm thinking about right now. And having to navigate this world of white supremacy, but keeping yourself intact as well.
Code switching.
And so unpacking, books like that in high school so that when you get to college, as you say, they're not going to drop out, they're going to stay and not assimilate either at the same time.
Right.
They're able to hold on to themselves.
Hold on to their community cultural wealth.
That's very important. We have a 21-year-old and we have an 18-year-old. The 21-year-old in full-on college, and his girlfriend's in Berkeley, top elite little school. She's gone through some stress and stuff, but it's really important for them to understand who they're representing, and I tell her that all the time. She's like, oh my God, I have to only sleep 2 hours. And I said, mija, it's going to be worth it for the families that you're going to help out with after. Remember, stay focused. Don't focus on the fire. The fire is always going to be hot. Stay focused deeper on the prayer with that fire that fire comes with.
And tell her advice, find mentors if she has it. And mentors, as Solorzano always taught us, come through books too, right? So Malcolm X was one of my big mentors, but find mentors in those spaces that she's in Berkeley to ensure that she has people she can go to have plática, to hold space for her.
And then we have our 18-year-old that's in that borderline. Right now that you mentioned it, He just enrolled himself in ELAC because they have a really, really good a basketball coach there right now.
Yes, I oversee athletics, so Coach Mosley, Netflix.
Yes, yes. So he's all about ELAC right now. So he just enrolled, but I can see it in him. He has that fear of like, I don't know if I can do college. I'm like, Mijo, you've been a straight A student all our life, like all your life, dude.
Yeah.
You got this. Like you belong there. Wherever you are at, it's because you're supposed to be there, and it's supposed to be tough because again, it's going to prepare you for what you have.
And just a plug to ELAC, not because I work there, but we do a lot of work to ensure that our students have folks that they can connect with and someone they can call. So we have some really powerful work that we've done over the last 5 years. My VP retires this week, and I have so much respect for her because she really pushed us to ensure that we created student services that really help our students feel like they belong, ensure that they succeed, and that they can call ELAC home.
Beautiful.
So for any folks in the east side, or if you're not in the east side, I'm at East LA College. Just look up La Doctora and you'll find me.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Wow.
That's so beautiful.
Shout out to ELAC.
I went to ELAC. I'm like, I went to ELAC myself for like a year, while I was in high school. I'm like, while I was in that continuation trying to fulfill everything. But
ELAC recreational hallway, that one that used to be in the front, that started my career. That's where
that's
my
literally
first
all the
gig were there.
mecha, from ELAC started all the.
I went to
events.
ELAC, but not as a student, just as a performer. I guess
but you shared your message again
Yes.
as a professor, in the sense of music. That's what
right.
we're talking about. It's like you may not have a doctor's degree, but you definitely have a message behind your music. And that, again, people have been listening to your music since they were 14, 15 years old, and they said that changed their life forever. It's no different than that one professor
That's right.
that gave that one student that extra little visit. Hey, you're doing good, mijo, you're doing good. You are a professor, but through hip-hop music.
And we're redefining actually what a professor means on our campus. We're calling it the Community Professor Series. So Azumali is one of the first artists that's going to be coming and talking about his music and really talking and dissecting and going through the thought process of his songwriting.
Wow.
Beautiful.
We would love to have you come by and do something similar.
Absolutely.
And other artists, as we call them, are professors of the community.
Oh, wow.
Because that white supremacist degree from an institution that weren't built for us anyways, that we were lucky to get degrees from because we went through the mud of that, doesn't mean that our cultural experts in the community are less than.
Right.
And so we're elevating that intentionally
so
at our school to make sure that our kids know that.
That's cool.
Beautiful.
I'm a prime example of that.
There it is. We got marketing professor right here.
I technically walked, but never got my diploma. I guess I was like 10, 50 credits shy. And there was always, girlfriend distractions, drug abuse distractions, hip-hop culture distractions. But, when a kid asks me, hey, do you have to go to college? I tell them, no, you don't have to. Because I just was dedicated to a certain craft, which was being a hardcore hip-hop enthusiast. And then one thing led to another, and then we bought a domain, and then now we run a dope hip-hop website that we could, that's actually sustainable for us,
I guess.
And that's beautiful. That's what we
And this
want.
is
We want to
not
empower
saying
that.
to any kid out there not go to college. I want you to go to college because if I had the opportunity to do it, I would go back and do it.
Well, there's certain degrees and things that you need to prepare. Like my partner Jenny, she's gonna go back to school and do her midwifery.
I'm like in that prime.
I told her, I
step
go,
of
look,
that,
Jenny, I love you. I care about you. You're super smart, but you don't read every day. Don't read every day. You have to read every day.
Those midwifery books
You
are
can
hard.
go to school.
Those words are hard.
School is like read every day. But
like, what does that word mean? He's like, oh, it just means dilation. Oh, okay, I got it. Like,
no, but
those
you know what?
words are like, oh.
And she does. I just got
medical school for me.
And she does read every day because she reads these really long posts and gets into articles and things that are important to her. And that she's already practicing those skills. But what I'm trying to say is that education is just information. That's all it is. Yeah. A lot of people base their life on, I went to Berkeley, and that automatically in their head goes, oh, he must have a good job, he must have this, because he went to this particular institution of learning, and that's not the case. If you do have a job from those institutions, I know you made a lot of compromises and maybe are doing things that you don't want to do because people who have money can make people do stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I were to, I'm in agreement with Armando in the sense of like, if I had the skills to be able to read and had another life choice, I would have went to college and experienced it how I needed to, but I didn't. That wasn't my experience. I don't want to discourage young individuals from not learning the tools that it takes to educate yourself, inform yourself about the things you're going to need as you move through this life. But it's not going to get you a job.
Right.
It's not going to, you know what gets you a job?
Your dream job.
Compromising gets you a job. Doing things that other rich people who have money are asking you to do, and you're going to go, okay, you know, and that's really what gets you money and a job, but not, the information helps you make the decision.
Well, and, you know, college is vital for someone like myself. Like, I run a big organization, and, you know, when I do try to bring interns in or try to recruit writers, I kind of do, you know, tell myself, you know, they have to have a BA. Or if we could exchange some college credits here.
It's crazy how it switches.
I never went to college, so it does help.
Comes from somebody that didn't go to college.
It shows me that these kids are actually trying to do something with their lives. You know, and not to shame anyone that doesn't go to college when they're 18, 19, 20, but with my experience, you know, dealing with the youth, you know, so kids that go to college have their heads on their shoulders. That's how I see it, guys.
But
it could be
that's the way society sees it. I think that's the way everybody sees it.
Right, but
we analyze it, but look how
Everyone
he
has their own,
described everything was about a job and how they were going to come on time. And see, that's what
that's
I'm
the
trying.
way that capitalism is designed.
Right.
And so the way that you're thinking about it, that's how we're supposed to think.
Maybe
right?
it's because I consider it a talent, right? Like, if I'm going to recruit a writer, well, what talents do you have? Oh, well, I have a degree.
Right.
Well, is that really a talent? It'll give you an edge, but it might not be a big talent, you know? Because I might bring him on board and he writes garbage reviews or garbage articles, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I thought you told me you went to college, you have this BA in English. What's going on?
Yeah, but it doesn't develop a personality. It doesn't develop hunger for something. It just tells you that you passed the grade and you listened to that professor, and he maybe didn't even want you to read the book. Read this chapter and give me your opinion about what this guy said, because it was kind of weird, and or whatever the lesson is.
It doesn't define who they are as a person.
Right.
It's like in my field, you know, again, I'm in the birth field and stuff. You know, people can go get a certification to assist families in a weekend. That's not going to benefit you. You can't graduate from that and think, oh yeah, I'm going to go and start working with families. No, it's experience. You know, it's an understanding of that. What are you going to do with what you learned in that weekend workshop and then implement it to how you want to take care of families, you
Absolutely.
know? Because again, you have to know who you are in these institutions. Okay, I'm going to be going to school to be a social worker. What kind of social worker are you going to be? You know, what kind of, everybody's defined
That's
different,
a good example, because people go into social work and then they come out traumatized.
Oh,
Yes,
big
'cause
time.
the
And that's why I mentioned it, because a lot of people, and then they go into teacher. Oh,
Where-
you know what, I'm
where
going to
they're
step
like-
down and just go be a teacher instead.
Here's a story about a social worker, not naming their names, but they're like, oh man, I had to put in a horrible report about a family that couldn't afford to maintain their children according to the state. Right? Like what? Like, instead of offering them help or a situation where they can get a job, you're going to traumatize that family and rip that child away from them. But that's been their technique from the get-go. That's my whole point.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. This is my opinion about just education in general. Your child spends close to 8, maybe even 10 hours a day at a school away from you.
Yeah.
This is our first analogy when we first became parents. We're
So
like, dude, these
40
kids are away
hours
from us
of
for a
that.
long time.
Like, we only get to feed them breakfast, take them to school, pick them up because they stay after school to get help. And then we feed them dinner, they go to sleep. How much time did I spend with them?
They're in the institution longer than they are with us.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
what was important.
The public
I don't know,
school
it's
system,
important for me
I
to-
grew up in a white neighborhood in Downey, California. I lost my Spanish. I went to a program called ESL. I don't know what that means.
ESL.
English is a second language,
Yeah.
is what they call it. Yeah.
Was
That's
it that?
horrible. Yes, that's what
Now
it's
I don't
called.
even know my Spanish. I'm not even fluid in Spanish anymore.
Wow.
And back in the days too, even if you had, your,
my
10 or
parents
11
shame
and
me
didn't
to this
know
day.
English, they would put you with the classes where, that you were dealing with kids that had autism and, Down syndrome.
I remember
It's
growing up as a
horrible.
kid, and all I knew was Spanish. That was my first language until I went to that program. They just said, no, can't talk anymore. And my parents, they even got convinced, mijo, only speak to me in English.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Dad,
Sound familiar?
Dad,
Sound familiar?
You're from Aruana, Michoacan. My mom's from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and they're forcing me to only speak English. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So
And
no
now it
more
backfired,
white
'cause now
supremacy.
They're
Same colonizer.
yeah. Now they're telling me that they're ashamed of me because I don't speak Spanish now. I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
That's why I said no more of that.
In a
gente.
good way,
The
though,
time
right?
is
It
now
just-
to rise up. We got to learn our language again. We got to know our cultura again.
And
You know,
this
for
is
myself.
why I think, LA College Prep Academy is so important, so vital to create that alternative for these youth out here in the jungle that I call Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So what grades are you guys accepting right now?
It's high school, so grades 9, 10, 11, and 12, and we'll accept any kid in those grades who wants to come and really learn the truth and learn the facts about how to navigate through this crazy world that we call America. And summer bridge programs. We have 3 different programs over the summer. So Brenda Perez of Restorative Justice for the Arts, she runs a nonprofit where she protects murals when they're getting painted over by gentrifiers in Northeast LA. So she's going to be teaching the students about this theory called eco-psychology and how gentrification is literally bad for your psychological well-being and also your physical well-being.
Wow.
And we'll have some iconic legendary murals working side by side with the kids to paint a 40-foot mural on our campus.
Wow. That's a big project.
Yeah, and then we have Tanya Suzuki, who runs a restorative practice piece independent from schools. She works with schools to teach kids and teachers, but in this case during the summer to teach kids how to have good relations with themselves, with their families, with their culture. And she'll be doing a 2-week program on that. And then DJ Fuzzy from Palms Up Academy will be doing a songwriting poetry class for the last week of summer.
Wow.
And Azomali will do a 1-day workshop, again, talking about the thinking of his music and how he came to all those different topics in his content. And also Clear Bear from Indigenous Alliance. They will be coming through to talk about the indigenous histories of folks in northern and southern Americas.
Wow.
So a lot going on during the summer.
Very
9th,
cool.
10th, 11th, and 12th grade. We all have those teenagers at home willing to learn something. You just shared 4 different beautiful workshops that if I were to be a teenager, I would be like, oh my God, I want my voice to be heard. I want to go to those workshops. So listen up, community. This is a great opportunity for our children to start listening to their passion and start listening to what they want to do for their own selves and their own lives. Beautiful, beautiful school. And for those that don't know, we live in LA. LA is a big community, but they are literally located right by Debs Park. Everybody knows where Debs Park is at. Ernest Debs Park it's literally in the heart of LA. So,
625 Coleman
Pasadena.
Avenue, Los Angeles, California.
3 miles from Boyle Heights.
042.
Yeah, 3 miles from Boyle Heights, a mile away from Pasadena, down the little hill from El Sereno. Very good, like prime location.
Well, I'm
Centrally
excited to meet both of you. You guys seem like progressive educators that
We're very happy.
that are offering a lot of stuff
Thank
to our
you.
community that
Thanks
we
for
need,
having us.
and we need to continue to not just take for granted, because these things are hard to get into your possession and then implement this certain curriculum. I know exactly what Anahuac Mecat went through, and they still go through, and they still have to kind of like shift and move and do their thing so that they could stay standing. But my dream is to have alliances on every front against white supremacy that has been unfair for all people, even their own people, white people. It's been unfair to you too. You don't even see it. That's my point, is that power comes in breaking down barriers of judging people from where region they came from or what color of skin. Listen to what they have to say and what information they have to share with you. I think that was the power of ancient Mexico, was they didn't have that. If you had wisdom and you had something to share that was going to implement something positive or something profound in my life, I'm not going to go, look at that short, slanty-eyed guy. He didn't know what he was talking about. I would actually listen. And I think that's how we got to levels of profound understanding, because we didn't understand education as being something that you use to make a living. But education from my meditation, my personal opinion, was something that you needed to guide you through life. That's not money.
Right.
That's not making a
rooted in
living.
money.
If us as educators, as artists, were to analyze making a living, what are you trying to say? Making a living.
What is a living?
Critically analyze that.
Yeah.
Making a living.
Right.
Why do I have to make a living?
Is making
I'm
a living
alive
a big-
already.
Right.
Is
I'm
making
alive
a living
already.
a big-
Being alive is making a living. Your heartbeat pumps. You have intelligence. You can engineer things. You can take care of things on your own. That's what I would love to inspire, the autonomy of oneself and whatever practices you decided to take on that helped you in your spirit. And if any information I got, because I am a hip hop artist and I do give information through my music, helped you, please go to them and find them. If you can find inspiration for your child, at least put them in the summer program, get them introduced with things that I feel are revolutionary in my mind, but revolutionary in a very different way. You know, where it doesn't have to be combative in your face. I'm just stay out of my way.
Right.
And now if you get in my face, it could be combative and something different.
That's right.
But if you just leave me alone,
I'm
leave.
good.
That's it. We're good, right? I think
Yeah.
that's the
Good, yeah.
message.
So Dr. Gordon, before we let you go, I have a very
Yes, sir.
important question to ask you. What's your message to a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid that is an aspiring rapper and that's all he wants to do, right? But he's going to go to college, right? 18, 19, drops out, wants to be a rapper, right? He asks you, being an academic yourself, like, what's your response to that kid if he asks you, hey, man, I want to be a rapper for the rest of my life, but I'm like, I am accepted to college. I do get, good grades. I could go to the community college, but I might want to just drop out and do the rap shit. Like, because you are in the background
That's
industry.
a great question.
Right? So
That's a
what's your
great
message to that
question,
kid
yeah.
if he goes up to you like, hey, man, Dr. Gordon, I want to be a rapper for the rest of my life?
I would use the same analogy to an athlete, right? So if you have a multi-million-dollar contract sitting in front of you, and you can take that and take that back to your community, then do it. Do it right then and there, because who knows if and when that contract will ever come back in front of your hands again, and utilize that and bring it back to the community. Nipsey Hussle, although he never signed a major contract, right? He took those monies from the rap game and was really building a little block that he bought, in his neighborhood. And so, unfortunately, we still live in a white supremacist capitalist society where the dollar really can get you some resources for your community. So if that kid had a multi-million-dollar contract in front of him, I'd say take it, run with it. But at the same time, let's keep in contact and let's still continue to read, continue to build, so I can mentor you along the way. And at the same time, we're going to make sure that you have the proper tools, particularly the reading and literacy skills, to dissect those contracts to make sure that you don't get took.
Okay, so that's a great answer, bro. So, Zero, same question to you, brother, because you're a very influential hip-hop artist.
Okay, so, all right, you're going to leave school, you're going to leave all that. Be prepared to be broke. Be prepared to work harder than everyone else. Be prepared to put your own money that you're doing something else, right, to do your dream. Because, even if you did have the contract in front of you and you didn't know how to read it, a lot of your hard work in life and time spent could be given to somebody going, well, you didn't even recoup my initial investment to you. If you don't know how to do those economics, then you don't have any permission to be in front of that contract. I know. I've been an independent artist for 25 years. I know how hard it was for me. I had to go build a $2 million company just to do my art. Just to do it was. So what I'm trying to say is, you young artists, you 16-year-old that you're going to just drop out and do the rap game, you're going to work harder than you've ever worked, ever. Because being a hip-hop artist isn't just in being talented. It's what is the depth of your soul, right? R&B and Rakim were interesting because Rakim went into his soul and found intellectualism and found the deep understandings he had of Egypt. right? And he just intellectualized it into music and became popular and made a living off of it. But that's 1 in a million, right? So if you're going to be dedicated to art, just dedicate your life to art, but know that you're going to work harder than you ever worked ever, right? But not going to school is not going to be any different. So that's my point. Just work hard until you get to where you're going, whether it's in education, whether it's in art, whether it's whatever. Inspire yourself with working hard.
I would also say it's a practice and a discipline. Again, whether you're going to be going to school or pursuing your art, and if you want to get good at it and be successful, like you said, you got to put in your hours, you got to put in your time.
Long
you
time.
got to pay your dues. And if you're going to go the music route, it's going to be a lot harder than going to college. College is easy compared to,
of course, yeah.
Compared to doing the music
the rules
route.
and read the books
College
and
is
do
just
the
very
test.
easy. Yeah.
You've been a fan of my music
This
for
is what I tell kids. Like, hey, always have a plan B. If the rap shit doesn't work for you, at least you have a degree.
Yeah. Well, that'll get them a job.
How do you feel about that, Dr. Gordon?
It's true. College is a backup plan for a lot of people, right? For even us, I would say, to a certain extent, right? I was doing music as a kid and saw how hard it was to make a living off of that. Again, making a living within that capitalist context, because they strip away our humanity, and us breathing isn't enough to live.
And I say it strips away your identity as well.
Yeah.
Well, Armando, you've been a fan of my music for a long time. How many headlining shows have we played? I mean, dude, I just got my first one like a couple of days ago. It
Absolutely.
takes so long, and to have the people just stay there, right? How many rooms did I play with nobody there? A lot. I played a lot, and it psychologically messes with you. You feel like you're doubting your art, but that's the part of art that people don't understand. That's what makes you, I got to write better. I got to put more time. I got to do. That's why I say you're going to work harder than you ever worked. I had to run a business and do my art. My time was spent, and it had an effect on my family.
Yeah.
Now I just do my art, and my partner contributes to our family, and I contribute to my family, and now we're happy. But I'm still working very hard, and it's not something I wouldn't discourage. Education is information. If you have information, then you can make proper decisions. You know, the power of Malcolm X was that he just read. And he didn't even get a degree after. He was just intelligent enough to guide through life, stick up to newspaper people, TV people that were putting him on the spot. Oh, really? You nigger, come sit right here and let me intellectually destroy you, while Malcolm X was just boom and just went, whoa. Yeah. They didn't know what to expect. That's what we need to inspire in the community. And it sounds like your program is doing just that, by giving people a chance to learn themselves in whatever direction. And you're a very powerful woman.
Gracias.
Señora, I mean, la doctora.
La doctora
de información.
That's my rap name.
And she's a rapper.
And, you know, as me and my partner are very embedded in this community, we have Malinali Superfoods, which is on Whittier Boulevard, which is right near East Los Angeles College.
Right
and
down the street from East LA College.
You know, I'm glad that our community is building to what it's becoming, and hopefully our sharing of your school will inspire people to take their children there. You're super humble, and you're super powerful. And us together as a community, as a network, as a family that has no judgments over where you came from. I don't care if you're Filipino or not. I don't care what you know. Just be a human in front of me, and I'm going to treat you the same way.
Right.
That's the true power in our indigeneity and acceptance. You know, my friend told me, Daniel told me one thing. He's all, you don't get conquered if you're welcoming them in. It's like, hey, come sit down, have food. Or, you look dirty, let me wash you up. And those people don't conquer you. You know, you had the power. And there's a lot of stories that books are not going to have. You know, they're not going to have. When white supremacy came with the narrative that we are the most powerful people and we own everything, even you and your children and your children's children. That's what white supremacy is. So we have to navigate that.
That's right.
And you giving us the tools to do that and our future to do that, I thank you.
Thank you.
So lacpacademy.org. how easy is it to enroll these kids? Just simply call that phone number?
Call that phone number, and then we'll set you up with a tour to check out the campus. We're open pretty much every day, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And come to our open mic and check out how we get down on Wednesdays, 7 to 9
So the
p.m.
phone number is 323-257-1499. Give that number a call. Get your kids enrolled. Check out the open mic on Wednesdays.
Wednesdays for 7 to 9
You
p.m.
said? We got Dr. Gordon here, the legend himself. We got Zero of El Vuh, Las Aslan,
Jenny
Jenny's
Dula.
podcast.
We got the famous Jenny. She's far more famous than all of us put together.
I'm not.
We got
Stop.
Jenny in the building.
Well, I want to do my part, and as a musician and as somebody who's a part of a production company, I know that we can gather some artists to be a community awareness day probably there, where we can invite families, a family-friendly thing.
that'd be
We can
great.
do outreach in that way. We can share our Malalali superfoods.
Absolutely.
We can and inspire young parents or individuals who have children in those age groups to go enroll in this school and try it out and create a network that is going to change the 7 generations. White supremacy doesn't have a right to live forever.
Yeah.
And that's what the statements that we're making as groups and as individuals that are creating new alternatives for our people, but they don't have the right to live forever. And their ideologies should be challenged. And that's what we do. And that's what we're doing here with LA Natives. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Thanks
story.
for having us. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
We're family. We're going to continue to build. I know this is just the introduction to what we're doing. Friday was just the beginning of our event. And we're creating new, like I said, you don't have the right to rule our lives forever. And our great abuelo, Cuauhtémoc, told us that we would remember the children of the children of the children of the children of the children would remember who they are, take stands, and protect themselves. That's the only way you survive on this planet, is by protecting yourself and trusting your partner and having disagreements, but knowing that family unit is the future. So thank you for coming on. And
Thank you.
Appreciate you
Appreciate
and
you.
bringing your children. And, if it was
I
a
know,
little
it was
noisy,
weird.
guys, it was because
Yeah.
our kids were
They're playing
running
in the
around.
background.
And that's okay. You can
But
do
this
that.
is what we're about. We're about
Yeah.
community. We're about family. We're about representing the 7 generations of familia, that ometeo of the male and the female balance of
That's right.
everything, of all creation.
Kilo Hana, our son, is just a beautiful mixture of both the cultures. His full name, he didn't want to say it, but I'm going to say it for him. Kilo Hana Lapu Lapu Kitsakoa Choa Oliganga.
Whoa.
Wow.
And he has a big, powerful name that we intentionally gave him to just be one with both of his communities. His Filipino indigenous side and of course his indigenous side here in the Americas.
Beautiful.
Beautiful family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Legendary show for everyone that's going to be listening this to through Spotify or iTunes. Man, I can't wait. A lot of good content on this episode, guys. Again, we got Dr. Gordon. We got Zero of El Vuh. We got Jenny in the building. Go ahead and say your name one more time.
So Vanessa Ochoa, you can find me at East LA College, La Doctora.
La doctora.
ELAC.
So not only
ELAC, right?
do we have
ELAC, East LA College.
not only do we
Have
have
two
a high school
doctoras.
resource, but we have a community
Yes,
college
please
resource.
see me as a resource.
Absolutely.
Find me at East LA College. Remember, 2
True-
years free
true
college.
trailblazers.
2 years free college.
There you go.
Spread the word.
Absolutely
I'm
true.
a
trailblazers
roll
right
because
here.
I know I have some childbirth education
Guys,
courses that I have to
This
take.
this school is so important for the city of Los Angeles. I can't thank you enough, Dr. Gordon, for
Thank you
coming
for
out to
having
the
me.
event, setting up
Appreciate
a
it.
booth.
That was an amazing event,
I
you
hope-
guys.
I
Thank
hope-
you so much, everybody. Friday that came out. That was so
Yeah.
beautiful to see so much cultural mix. Everybody just had smiles in their faces, and everybody was there to have a good time. It was such a
First
beautiful
live
event
show I've been
Friday.
to in years,
COVID,
and it was a great way to come back to a live show.
Yeah, it sure was.
Anyone in the audience that likes what you hear, visit lacpacademy.org. There's a donate button right there. Just send them a couple bucks. Let's keep the movement alive. Let's get some kids enrolled into the school.
And if I can plug East LA College, I'm a dean in student services. I oversee the Dream Resource Center for undocumented folks, the Rising Scholars Program for those that were formerly incarcerated, the LGBTQ Center, the student athletes, the solidarity trainings that we have, and our newly launched Emoji program to support our Black brothers and sisters.
Wow.
Absolutely.
You're doing some
Legendary
amazing
episode,
work,
guys.
Mohed.
Both of you
Amazing
guys.
work.
Thank you.
All of
Thank
you
you.
guys. Yes.